right. Going. All right. So let's get going here. A couple things. Housekeeping. Lab this week. We got Wednesday and Thursday. We got diaspores. So this material is on the exam. Make sure you pay attention. Pay attention in the lab. Work through the handout. And should be okay. Should be okay. As far as who is going to get the extra credit on the final exam, hopefully I can post it on Friday morning. Hopefully Thursday night. But just kind of depends on how long it'll take Michaela to get it to me. I'm going to ask her that she sends it to me on Thursday, since she'll have the list. All I need is her top 5 for the labs, and then what we'll do on, I'll make an announcement where I break it down for everyone with their fitness scores. That'll get posted on Friday. We have a quiz going live. I think it is already live for the competition stuff. This is due tomorrow at 11:30. That's a due date. This one doesn't have any taking it late potential, because I need to make it unavailable so that the key becomes available. All right, so you got to take it by 11:30. After that, I think at midnight I have it disappearing. And at that point, then you can access the key. You can open it up, see the questions, see the answers, and that'll help you study for the final on Monday. All right. If you donated blood, you should have received one of those sheets, violent sheets, saying the do's and don'ts of blood donation. Just bring that to me, show it to me, or snap a picture of it. Just need to see your name on it. Or if you signed up through TriBeta, I'll ask for a list of who donated, or I think they also have a list of someone donated for you. They'll put their name and then donated for whoever. So as soon as they get that information, I will put it up in Blackboard so you can keep track. Keep track of if I have it recorded in my gradebook. If you didn't get a chance to donate, which apparently we did, which was great. If we saturated that bloodmobile, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So if you still want to donate, you can go to any of the places here. Vitalent takes walk-ins. I'd suggest making an appointment for them. They're not open 7 days a week, although they might be leading up into the holidays. But they are, I think it's every other Sunday they're open. They're open on Saturdays. Schedule an appointment, go in, donate blood, donate platelets. Or if you are a regular at the Plasma Donation Center, it used to be called BPL. I don't know if it is or not.
I think it's like Ripple.
What is it?
Ripple.
Yeah. Something. What's close? That's it used to be the Midnight Cowboy? That was the name of the bar?
Midnight Rodeo.
Midnight Rodeo. That's what it used to be. Yeah, right over there. Yeah, go ahead. I think they pay you to donate. That'll work. That'll work. And I'll take it up until Thursday of finals week. So that gives you time. If you're busy, if you're swamped this week, I understand. If you're swamped this weekend, I understand. If you want to wait until finals week where things after your finals starts to slow down, I'll take that. And next, our final, in our lecture section of the course, I posted the exams. Both versions. Versions are basically the same, with the exception of the answers switched around. There may be one or two questions where I actually changed the answers because I couldn't really flip them. So I just changed some of the wording, but they are posted. I feel that this will be easier than me trying to dig out your individual copy. So here are the exams. You can see it, help you study. If you're looking for the answer sheet, the definitions and the calculations are posted on the bulletin board. Same thing with the multiple choice, multiple answer sections, but you can go into grade scope and you can see your score for each of the questions. And then lastly, IDEA evaluations were at 62% right now. Not bad, not bad. It's good enough for a 1% bump on the lecture grade or overall course grade. So not too bad. Still have until Friday. We'll look at it on Friday. Any questions? This is where we left off, competition and the niche. All right. So the niche reflects the pattern of resource use. Basically, some people would consider the niche the role an organism plays in a community or in a habitat. There is a definition of a niche that matches that, right? But we're looking more at resource usage because individuals' role, you can have dual roles for species, but you can't have species that have 100% overlap in their niche. So you can have an insectivore. You can have a predator who is an insectivore. That's their role. You can have another predator who is also an insectivore. That is their role. Their roles overlap, but that doesn't necessarily mean that their niche space overlaps. So the niche space is a little bit more specific in that it talks about the resource utilization. Now, the fundamental niche is the theoretical niche. This is their space. This is what they can use. Once you put these individuals in competition, that niche space is going to change, or it can change. It can contract, or it can shift, all right? But the immediate response is contraction. So if this is our space, and we're defined by these upper and lower bounds, this peak is going to move, but it's going to move within these bounds. And the whole goal of this shifting or this change is to limit the amount of overlap, resource overlap, because the more overlap you have, the higher the intensity of competition. The more competition you have, the worse off both of the competitors, or the worse both of the competitors perform. All right? Now, over evolutionary time, what we see is that selection will favor that resource usage that has minimal overlap. So we're going to start favoring, or selection is going to favor those individuals with the traits whose resource usage might not extend to their full fundamental niche. And what we end up getting then is movement. Movement of our peaks. We can get movement in terms of how wide it is. We can get movement in terms of how narrow our niche breadth is, and so forth. And this process is called character displacement. All right, it's called character displacement. This happens on an evolutionary time scale. And the whole goal again, is to limit the amount of niche overlap. Now, how do we know if we're seeing a realized niche versus a shift. So character displacement. Well, we have to go in and we have to remove the effect of competition. We have to remove that competitor to see what does the individual do. If it's character displacement, our resource usage stays the same. It doesn't change because selection produced that. But if we remove that competitor and all of a sudden our resource usage expands, that's a clear sign that we're seeing the realized niche, and then it's expanding to utilize its full fundamental niche. But what happens if we go out and we see two individuals that are out in this, this resource space? They don't look like they're competitors. And we remove one and the resource use stays the same. Is this a product of competition or not? So did competition produce this resource, this pattern of resource usage, or did something else produce that pattern of resource usage? Because right now, that looks like these individuals don't compete. But we may be able to rationalize that at one time they were competitors. And that over time, we've had a reduction of overlap and thus character displacement. And this is a problem we have. And we actually have a name for this. This is called the ghost of competition past. This idea is an explanation for communities that have niches that appear randomly associated because competition eliminated some of the species in the past. So basically, you've got character displacement that could have been produced in the past. We can't determine that now because they're no longer competitors. And then within a community, if a community's been around through evolutionary time, you have evolution shaping each of those individuals' niches. So while they may have been competitors at one time, today we see them as non-competitors. And this idea was put forth because it may have then led to this adaptive radiation. This is bird beaks. You've got your Darwin's finches down here. Get some of these seeds. But the idea that at one time they were competing for the same food source, but through competition, through changes in their niche, you start having evolution and character displacement. Do we see competition today? No, we don't. But it was occurring. It was responsible for those patterns. And that explanation is our ghost of competition past, which is appropriate. We're getting into the holiday season. All right, so just because species aren't competitors didn't mean that they used to be competitors at one time. Character displacement could have occurred. Ready? A few more minutes. All right. This kind of wraps up our competition. So competition is all for a limiting resource. Competition exists both within a species and between species. Competition is one of these biological interactions where it is negative for both of our interacting species. All right, mutualism is an interaction where we have positives for both. Commensalism, we have a positive for one, no neutral interaction for the other, neutral effect. Parasitisms, positive for one, negative for the other. It's the same thing with like predation and herbivory. As a species interaction, you've got positive, one gains, the other loses. In competition, they're both competing for the same limited resource, and that resource is limiting because it limits their population size. And once you introduce the competitor, there's even less resources that are available for our species and our individual to utilize. So they're going to see either change in carrying capacity, or you're going to see change in population growth rates, changes in that little r, intrinsic rate of growth. Or you can see both. Now, when we look at competition and try to make predictions about the strength of competition, it all comes down to the ecological niche. So the niche is that n-dimensional hypervolume resource usage. It looks at all the resources out there, it looks at what organisms can utilize, it tries to mathematically describe the resource space. And this is both biological and abiotic resources. Our intensity of competition depends on the overlap of our resource usage. So the more overlap, the stronger the competition. But also disturbances. Because disturbances are going to alter our population densities. If we alter our population densities, we will also alter the intensity of competition. But the overall effect of disturbances kind of depends on the magnitude of the disturbance and the frequency of the disturbances. So if we have frequent disturbances that occur, we tend to favor species that are more R-selected. They favor more, or they have traits more towards reproductive potential. If we have infrequent disturbances, we tend to get more what you could call stable populations or stable communities. So most of our species are going to be near the carrying capacity, which means we're selecting for more of those K-selected traits. So what's the outcome of competition? The outcome overall is exclusion. If you have two species that overlap and require the same limiting resource, one species will always win out. And that's the competitive exclusion principle. No two species can coexist on the same limiting resource. But we know that this doesn't always happen. We know that species coexist because we can look outside and see entire communities that have existed and existed for a long time. So what ends up happening then? Well, we can have shifts in our resource usage. So change to that realized niche, and that minimizes competition. You can have evolution of adaptations that ultimately cause shifts in our resource usage. And the end result of all of those new adaptations and changes in our competitive ability and resource usage would ultimately be character displacement, where we've evolved so much, our adaptations have changed so much that we no longer have significant niche overlap, and thus they're no longer considered competitors. So coexistence is possible if we have minimal niche overlap. But then it gets us to the last point. We look out and see a community. Community looks like to have individuals that should be competing, yet they coexist. Think of all of the insectivores that are out there. How do they coexist? Well, they've got minimal niche overlap. They have a different set of resource usage. What produced that? Why do you have some insectivores favoring certain types of insects compared to others? Well, could that be due to competition? Yes, it could be. And that's the ghost of competition past. We can't demonstrate it now, but that doesn't mean it happened years ago, hundreds of years ago, to produce this character displacement to produce what we see today. Questions? So there's more to competition. And we talked about alpha as the niche overlap. That goes into some of the competition equations, the Lockwood-Volterra mathematical models, which are good in theory. Right? They play out as well in reality, probably not, but they're good. So this is where we're gonna stop here. It gives you time to start reviewing. I strongly suggest reviewing our exams on Monday morning at 8. Right, look over the exam questions, look at your answers, look at what the key is posted. If you have questions, bring them. You can also email me your questions ahead of time, and then I will present them on Friday, questions and the answers, and I'll make them anonymous. So if you are afraid to ask a question because you feel like you'll sound stupid, don't worry about it. I will make it anonymous. I won't put it up. Alexandra asks, what's the definition of ecology? Not necessarily a stupid question, but it's one that we've had numerous times on quizzes, exams, right? But if you have questions, we can answer them on Friday. Yep.
What does the math portion look like? Is it like all year long?
Yep.
Really extensive maths? Was it like 2 pages opposed to 1?
Yeah, so what I'm looking at is about 100 of the multiple choice, multiple answers, broken down into about 35 maybe of the multiple answer questions, 65 just single answers. So the 65 single answers would include any true false questions that might be on there. But those are you answer one question, which, I don't know, said some of you didn't hear the instructions or didn't read the directions, because on some of those I had multiple answers and those are just wrong. You had one answer choice. And then definitions so we typically had 10 definitions on the exams. We'll probably have 20 to 25 definitions. And those will be, you'll have the word bank, and you'll write the word that matches the definition. And then on the calculations, you'll have maybe 6 to 8 questions. So yeah, the answer sheet will likely be 2 pages. So front and back, and then like one more sheet. And I'll have the equations posted. You'll get all the equations. You'll have to know how to use them. And then you do have to consider, we are in a time crunch, so the likelihood that I have you complete an entire life table is probably nil. Especially we didn't. I guess some people did it by hand, but I know my labs, I showed you how to use Excel to do that. So we've got Hardy-Weinberg. We've got population growth. Calculating net reproductive rates from life tables. Right, if you have a completed life table, I think we had that exam 2, maybe. So those are types of questions. Point-wise, I think the calculations on this test were 2 points a question. So probably all the calculations will likely be worth 2 points for a total of maybe 10 to 15% of the total, if that. Just kind of depends on what calculations are in the estimates, how long I think it'll take. start reviewing, jot down your answers, and email me your or jot down your questions. Email me your questions. We'll answer questions on Friday. So we will meet here, but there's no lecture. We'll answer questions. Quiz today, attendance quiz. Quiz today basically covers the niches. What are valid niches? Would be the question. So the answer choices were, can't remember. All right, so your answers were Darwinian niche, formulaic niche, sympatric niche, realized niche, functional niche. So you basically say the question was, which of these would be a actual terms? Realized niche and functional niche. Everything else it just made up. Realized and functional. They all sound good, right? Darwinian niche? Sounds good. Maybe that'll be a question on the exam. Darwinian niche. We'll have an attendance quiz on Friday too. I will say on Friday, since we're answering questions, if no one has questions, we'll be done. It'll be a quick come into class. No one asks questions. I'll give you the answer to the attendance quiz, and we're done. So, what we're doing. Bring your questions. Start studying. And it is comprehensive. All right, we're done.